Rise. This is our second conversation, and as we mentioned before the break, it's all about unraveling legacies at the Caribbean Studies Forum. Joining us to guide in that conversation is Dr. Christopher Deshiel. He is a CFS, and that stands for Caribbean Studies Forum Committee member, and he's also a part of the FEA faculty, which is the
Faculty of Education and Arts.
Federal Education and Arts. And also with us is Miss Erin Guzman. She's also a part of the CSF committee member and FEA faculty. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I understand that the Caribbean Studies Forum or conference has been around for some time, but there was a brief hiatus during COVID-19, and now we're back on the saddle, and we are inviting people to have this in-person experience. For persons who might not be familiar with the forum, though, can we get a brief overview of what the CSF is?
Sure. So the Caribbean Studies Forum started in the late 90s to early 2000s, and it was birthed out of East Carolina University, of which I'm a proud alumni. Go Pirates.
All right.
And so the two founders are Dr. Gay Willens and Dr. Ciudad Dina. And so that's where the forum was birthed. It focused a lot on Caribbean literature, research, history, and travel. And then East Carolina University sort of has a reputation for capturing a lot of University of Belize students.
Okay.
And that's a part of why I was there. And so at one point, a lot of Belizeans studied there, and there became sort of this collaboration with Belizeans and CSF. And then eventually, the University of Belize and East Carolina University had some sort of agreement and partnership, and I think that's where
All right.
stepped in.
Yeah, I had joined the chairship, I suppose, of the conference in its first iteration at UB. So when UB sort of inherited this to have a international conference, and it moved from the a US-based forum to a Belize-based one that attracted some international presenters, and it was wonderful to share research at University of Belize and attract other researchers around the world to present on Caribbean-themed topics, basically.
How important is this forum in the broader context of Belizeans and how we're affected by things that happen within the region?
Yeah, but these kinds of things are like, I don't know how you would call it, nutrition. It's something essential for academics, for scholars, for anybody interested in history, culture generally for the region, to have these kinds of venues and a forum, as the name suggests, to exchange ideas, to network. It's quite stimulating every time you go to one of these academic conferences, and they're so often abroad, so kind of prohibitive. You come back from those things just energized, ready to further your own research, get valuable critical feedback to projects that you are doing, and it's just sustaining for everyone involved.
I think of myself, though, who just tries to stay connected to the pulse of what's taking place across the world and connected to what have happened in the past. Is this a space for people who just want that sense of social awareness and understanding historical Caribbean context to what is taking place as well in real time?
Yes, actually, what you're saying hits the nail on the head with our theme for this year, which is Caribbean Past and Futures, Legacies, Rhythms, and Visions.
Nice.
So it is a sort of umbrella theme that has, categories or sub-themes, but ideally, the reasoning behind why we chose that theme is to encapture the diverse nature of the Caribbean. Of course, honoring our past, what came before us, and then how our past influences this contemporary world that we are operating in. So,
What is interesting about this all is the duality of who we are as Belizeans, right? We're Central American and we're also Caribbean, and then we fit into this whole melting pot that's called the Caribbean, the CARICOM block and all of that stuff.
yes.
Let's talk a bit about that. How do we look at that duality in that particular context?
Yeah, the theme is so broad, and I think even the concept of the Caribbean is a kind of container that could accommodate all sorts of types of inquiry. So you get presentations on history, culture from the region, not only the area that people might consider, okay, this is some politically the Caribbean space, but you realize that Caribbean culture pervades all sorts of different spaces. And actually, if you think about where these conferences take place around the world, there's Caribbean Studies associations all around the place. I attended one in Australia once. And I think, well, there are people from the Caribbean, but also people outside the Caribbean interested in the Caribbean in places all around the world. So it's a locus that attracts all sorts of topics and themes there.
I was looking at some of the themes or some of the topics that will be covered. It says here that there will be conversations around anthropology, arts, economics, education, folk culture, geography, history, language, linguistics, literature, medicine, music, politics, psychology, religion, business, tourism, and sociology. Now, there are certain things here on this list that kind of feels like, you'd expect that, but I'm interested to talk about psychology. How does that have its place in this conversation? Psychology when it comes to Caribbean history.
I think that the task of the conference organizers trying to place all of the diverse presentations into coherent, thematic categories is tough. But you inevitably find some connections. For the psychology, there's all sorts of approaches there. I feel like this conference does have something on kind of educational psychology.
Okay, got you.
Teaching in the Caribbean space. But yeah.
There's also a paper that fits under one of our subheadings of contesting systematic oppressions that focuses on that psychological aspect of oppression and how it affects us as Belizeans and also how it affects us as scholars as well.
Just thinkers in general, when we go back to colonization and how that has carried on in our minds and in our psyche of how we interact with people and how we think intrinsically, I think is something that also ties to psychology. There's also a mention here of folk culture. Can we touch on that too? I think that kind of speaks for itself, but there's an appreciation that everyone could have for folk culture.
We didn't mention that there's also some performances, some entertainment that touches into the topic of folk culture. With the UB Steel is going to be there, chorale. We have Gales Point, Bram and Sambai.
Interesting.
And a marimba, Felix Cook marimba. So all of these things come into play. There's also some presentations specifically on poetry. And I think some of the people performing are also participating in the conference discussions and themes as well.
So will this be like presentations from like papers, or will there be opportunities for dialogue, for people to ask questions, to engage in conversations?
So it's a mixture. There are paper presentations, there's at least 2 panel discussions, and then at the end of each segment or each category, there's open Q&A for the people who have presented. And so the conference is from February 18th to February 20th, and it takes place between the UB Conference Center and the UB Jaguar Auditorium.
Do you have to pay to be a part of it? How can we join?
So presenters have a fee. Locally, professionals pay $60. Internationally, it's $120. But if you're attending, it's free.
Awesome.
Yes. So please come on out, come see us, be involved, participate, be a part of history. There's a segment of the conference that focuses on culture, creativity, and healing practices, and also another segment that talks about language, diversity, and linguistic justice. And so I feel like it'll be an opportunity for Belizeans to hear from Belizeans about our own history, about our own culture, about our languages, and I feel like that's not an opportunity that's presented often. I think we're kind of used to the idea of other people telling us about our country. Well, this is an opportunity for you know, your typical Belizean to tell you about your country.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Excellent.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event. 2 days, the 18th to the 20th. And we wish you guys all the best.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, and thank you for having us.
Absolutely. All right, we take another quick break, but don't go anywhere. Our next conversation is breaking barriers. Davia Richardson's historic swim season.